Mm.
And so we're continuing with the workshop slides, and Darinka is got some conflict. We've got Nico and Larissa has a sound problem, so we're using my telephone in the background for that. But doesn't matter too much, Larissa. Anytime you want to speak up, just say so, and I'll repeat what you said for Nico's benefit. I've got the telephone as close to the microphone as I can put it, but if it's not working, I'll just repeat it. So we were.
Thank you, Shirley, and my apologies for any inconvenience.
So she said thank you and she's sorry. So we were just completing the appreciation section the last time we did these. And this is picking this up. A friend of mine was an FBI agent, and he talked about going up to the World Trade Center after 9/11. And I asked him, what did you learn? And this is what he told me. Many words were spoken into the ears of the dead that they yearned to have heard while they were alive. Many words were spoken into the ears of the dead that they yearned to have heard while they were alive. So don't waste time. Begin habitual appreciation now before it's too late. Don't wait. That's the message here. So just to give a little humor, I had a engineer in one of my classes raise his hand and said, Charlie, I don't need any of this. And I said, really? He said, yeah. When I married my wife, I told her I loved her and let her know if anything changed. That's the engineering approach to this.
Okay. Yeah.
And the risks of being an engineer can laugh. So people talk about, I really think you've got to bring this into everyday life. And a lot of people have done this with great effect. But begin or end meetings with appreciation time. and we could start doing that on Saturday. A friend of mine was deputy administrator of NASA, and Rex Jevenen. By the way, he's now CEO of a major corporation. I asked Rex about how he appreciated. He said when he's on the airplanes, he writes handwritten notes to NASA employees appreciating them because there's nothing better to do flying along. You imagine what it's like to get a handwritten note from the deputy administrator? And really important thing is to celebrate team accomplishments. To me, there's a big integrity disconnect where we talk about teamwork, but the awards are almost always just individual awards. So what I did was I decided that the newest person to enter the division would interview everybody at a certain time of the year about what they accomplished last year. And they would then put it into a PowerPoint presentation. And I'd order in a couple of pizzas and we'd all sit around lunchtime and look at what we had done. And it always amazed everyone because we tend to solve a problem and immediately go on to the next problem. We don't tend to stop and appreciate it. There's a little secret here. I have more NASA awards than anybody I know. And here's how you do that. I did this exercise right before my annual performance review with my supervisor. So I'd take and put this into about a 10-page Word document and pop it on his desk and say, here's what my division accomplished last year. And these people always awestruck. So it's just about where attention goes, power flows. And I learned over the years, it's really good to have a organization to name a 4D czar for a better term, to just keep bringing up the 4D, keep bringing up the appreciation, because without someone to re-stimulate, the action items in the office are urgent and presenting, and so you tend to just go do them and forget about everything else. So comments or thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would like to share a quick story. Talking about this previously as well, you become more aware of it. But what happened this weekend, applying this at a restaurant, with a breakfast, there was good service, and the waitress was like, served us well. And I said, can I see the manager, please? But, you know, she was so stressed, so stressed about that. You know, that thing of just calling the manager. And I told him with the waitress there, she said, must I be with? I said, absolutely. You know, and she was very anxious. And I said, no, I don't know what you're doing, but you're creating a very incredible energy. Yeah. We are so well served, and there's like a very good energy among the waitresses. And, you know, they were both taken aback. I mean, how many times will someone call a waitress here and the manager just telling them, well done, guys, you know?
Isn't it interesting that it's so rare that that's the expectation people have, is that you're getting ready to criticize them?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
when you call the manager.
Good for you, Nico. Great story. Thank you. And so the necessity of reinforcement and repetition. I saw this quote and was shocked. We forget 90% of what we learn within a week. Then I found this book. It's an interesting read, Brain Rules. And John Medina, he said, we forget 90% of what we learn in a university class within 30 days. So the point is that we forget so thoroughly and consistently that we forget we've forgotten. So I tell people, you know, you're in this workshop, you're feeling really good about all this material, you're going to bring it into your life. Here's the reality. It's gonna drop off like this curve, something like this. Is it possible this is true? I've talked about this before, but when I had to prepare for my all-day PhD written and oral comprehensive exam, I reviewed all my course material and I had forgotten an entire course. I had forgotten I even took the course, much less what was in it. So what you need to do is need to do the repetition, and something like the online tools can do these resets to take the data. And I think this is the original curve for this was days. I put quarters here, but it's days. So think about this. How did you learn the times table? Did you read it once and remember it? Repetition. How do any sports team succeed? Practice, practice, practice. So Itzhak Perlman, the famous violinist, described finishing a concert, and a young woman walked up to him and said, Mr. Perlman, I'd give anything to play the violin like you. He said, would you practice 7 hours a day? That's what I do. So you need to get the repetition. I mean, I think this is one of the most interesting and basic findings of this whole work. Without repetition, you're just wasting your time. So speaking of forgetting, an elderly couple were having problems remembering, so they went to a doctor. Doctor says they're physically okay, but they might need to start writing things down. When he gets up, the wife asks, where are you going? To the kitchen, he replies, will you get me a bowl of ice cream? Sure. Don't you think you should write it down? No, I can remember it. By the way, I'd like some strawberries on top. You better write it down because you know you'll forget it. Like whipped cream, so write it down. Irritated, he says, I can remember it. Ice cream and strawberries and whipped cream. I've got it, for goodness sake. The old man returns from the kitchen and hands his wife a plate of bacon and eggs. Stares at the plate for a minute and says, where's my toast?
Ah, can I quickly share another one?
Yeah, sure.
Applying the principle of learning. So my guys all over South Africa, you know, I see them from time to time and so on. So the change in strategy, applying this principle, is to set up a regular meeting. Once a month, we will discuss, you know, the Mandela legacy. We will discuss, okay, what is the implication for me? Certain principles identified. But what is it about? It is about, you can't see them once a year during a walk or a conference, and you know that they will integrate and take ownership of the culture and the way of thinking. So for me, this is the application of this principle. You
Yeah,
know,
you gotta keep bringing it back. Yep. So, interesting question early on. I'm trying to measure behaviors. And how do you measure behaviors in the presence of normalization of deviance? Do you remember this term? This is from Diane Vaughn and Challenger. And she talked about the fact that behaviors become normalized that are not normal and you don't notice it anymore. The frog in boiling water being a classic case. So do you know how I do this? You measure against a standard. This was not my original idea. I was in a workshop in Huntsville and I was musing about this and someone raised their hand and said, I know how you do it. And I didn't know how I did it. I said, tell me how I do it. She says, measure against the standard. So the standard, every behavior has a standard. This is probably the most detailed, because I think it's the most important behavior. It's HAPS, habitually. So you want to install appreciation in your personal bureaucracy. And that's what you talked about, Nico. Having it just there all the time and it pops up when it's appropriate. Got to be authentic. And the key to having it be authentic is to be in gratitude. So when you appreciate her, I'm sure she felt it because it was authentic because you were grateful for what she was doing. Promptly, that's exactly right. You did it right while she's almost still serving. Proportionally, yeah, I mean, you didn't give $1,000, you simply did a verbal appreciation, probably left a nice tip. Do they have tips in South Africa? Are they common?
Yeah, we give like normally like it's anything from 10 to 15%.
Okay,
Yes.
yep. And then finally, specifically, so you talked you modeled this very well with your example. You made it very specific about what it was, that the environment, the atmosphere she created. Okay? So what you're grateful for. I do this work in the group with the, just to remind you, the one that there are basically two things. I work with the team and we do a situation that's something presenting for them if it's an intact team. If it's a public thing like I do in China with 50 or maybe 300 people in the room, the one I have them work on is I have trouble motivating or communicating with children. And almost everyone can relate to that. Most of the people in the room have children, and the people who don't have relatives that have children. So the group works with just spontaneous things that I put on a flip chart and what you're grateful for. And this is very powerful for people. They never think about the fact they're grateful even to have a child. Then they go write their own personal material in the workbook. Then to appreciate, back to my proposal team. Remember this is where just to remind you, this is where we've been in a situation of a tough competition. They're feeling scared, they're losing. We shifted their mindset, and now what can they appreciate thinking about the customer? And they said, nobody. And I said, wait a minute, you mean to tell me that you're going to ask them to pick you to work on a project that's probably going to be a 5 to 8 year relationship, and they're not, you don't appreciate anything about them? Come on. And then I worked a lot with this competition. I said, what about the way that governments run the competitive process? And they said, oh yeah, it was fair, competent, very well done. I said, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to, as you make this oral presentation, which was half a day, you're going to have in your mind the right moment to authentically appreciate them for this. You're not going to script it in. You're going to wait until it makes sense, and you're going to appreciate this when the topic presents itself. They said, yeah, we can do that. So what I was trying to do is called confirmation bias. I was trying to give an injection into the customer's mindset so that they want to pick you. Everyone else involved with this, there's consultants. I think this kind of proposal is $50 million effort, something like that. Between the salaries of the staff working there. And by the way, they have overhead accounts. The government's basically paying for these things. And everyone else is there trying to make you make the best proposal. I'm working with what's called confirmation bias. I'm trying to get the evaluators to want to pick you, because that's how the brain works. Doesn't it work like that? We decide what we want and we pick the data to support it fundamentally.
Mm.
Okay. So appreciate verbally. We do the group work. What do you appreciate about the children? They write their own stuff, same thing. And this is interesting. I was doing a workshop in Beijing, and the day after this, the guy raised his hand and said, "Charlie, you know, we told that story about the buying the champagne, but I can't even think about something like that." And I said, "Well, you know, maybe email works." So I did an experiment myself. I took and thought about, these were mostly NASA people that I had worked with years ago, hadn't seen for years, and I sent them emails, something like this kind of structure, and the feedback that I got was incredible. So this would be a typical front end to pause to reflect how you enrich my life. If whatever's true, your commitment to character, and then express my deep appreciation to you for what. And like everything else, experiment with this. What if you send an authentic email to your supervisors, colleagues? So that worked. Okay, I had people in workshops. This was not atypical. I had a lady that said, I spent a lot of my money in Asia, as you would appreciate. It's very important to get good education. They're much more focused on this than people in the West are. Probably same thing in Russia. And people are willing to make enormous sacrifices to get their kids into the best schools. So they're sending people to US universities. And given the disparity in salaries between China and the US, it's no mean feat to be able to pay for this. So I sent a thing to her daughter who'd had some learning disabilities and finally gotten into a top university. I sent her an email, and one came back that said, "I just want to appreciate you, the sacrifices you made for me." So it isn't that hard to do this. So pay attention to what you're grateful for. I like the idea of going to your computer and writing this down, what you're grateful for in your life, in your work, in your family, in your overall situation, and print it out. And I think a good thing to do is put that by your bedstand. What would it be like if the last thing before you go to bed is to put your focus on what you appreciate, what you're grateful for, to have a good sleep? It's this simple. People need to feel appreciated by you. It's the foundation for everything else. So the question is, how do you respond to the Terminator? Not that Terminator, this Terminator. This is another name for the transition from dark to light every day. Most people automatically just get up in the morning and brush their teeth. What would it be like if you made appreciation the same kind of habit as brushing your teeth? Just as you brush your teeth every day, you appreciate it every day. And ask others whether they feel adequately appreciated. So this is an interesting thing to do. My clients, particularly in China, would ask me sometime during the workshop, "Do you feel adequately appreciated by me?" And I would always answer yes, because if you're going to have the willingness to ask the question, you're going to be paying attention to it. So Nico and Larissa, do you feel adequately appreciated by me?
I am. Thank you, Charlie. I have a privilege to know you for many, many years, and you've always been very appreciative of me and supportive of me. So thank you.
Thank you. Nico, Larissa answered yes.
Yeah, no, definitely also appreciate like the emails, you know, sending some other information. I always find that very interesting, and that's a way of appreciation for me
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
personally.
Okay, so do a card check. Let's do a thumbs up. Are we good here? Guys, thumbs up. Okay, and Marissa, okay. So let's
Fine.
take our morning stretch. Okay? On your feet. Okay, so in the trying to get a little humor in today's politically charged environment. I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, the shared interest, I need a drink.
Yeah,
So how did I get into this? Well, I worked for this lawyer guy and I could never get what I wanted from him. And I decided that it was my lack of a negotiating ability that was the problem. I later determined, no, he's just a jerk. But at the time, I thought I could do something about it. And when I went to Harvard, I became aware that there was the Harvard Negotiation Project and wrote this book. So I began to look at how to do negotiation. And the most powerful thing is addressing shared interests, enhancing relationships and collaboration. But I didn't work with him, and that's because he just stuck to his positions. He's kind of I think a lawyer in a technical organization, he was struggling with his own identity in the place, part of it. So the usual checklist, how do you pick something? Does it address a dimension? Yes. Is there a natural human need? No, not really isn't, because we tend to be more inclined toward conflict. That's our normal response. Me against my brother, me and my brother against my cousins, me and my brother and my cousins against a stranger, our tribalism. Why is it so powerful, the tribalism? We like people who are like us, people who share our storylines. This is called homophily. Can you see it? Sure. Can you measure it against a standard? Yep. Can learn it? Yep. We're going to practice here. Is it personally rewarding? Yep. Business results, absolutely. Many flight projects, I did this exercise and used the tools to get repetition. So addressing shared interest creates a social context of collaboration. This is interesting, meets both your needs and others. Going back to when I think we had some real leadership in the country, our most basic common link is we all inhabit this planet, breathe the same air, cherish our children's future, and are immortal. Well said. So I'm going to show you a videotape that's kind of fun here, humorous. Talk about examples with Junko and how I opened up cooperation with Japan using this. We're going to do experiential exercise. I think we can do it with just the two of you. And to remind you all the time, choose to focus on you changing you. So here's how you do this. I think you've got to pay attention to your own interests and know what they are. If you don't know what your needs, wants, and values are, you can't look for those in others. Then look to the interests, needs, values, wants of others. And if you look, there's always common ground. The question is, what do they want that I can want for them also? So if I could put a sign on every supervisor's desk in the world, this would be it. People do things for their reasons, not ours. Here's the magic in this. You address shared interests, you make the reasons the same. You with me?
Well, the subject of difficult negotiation reminds me of one of my favorite stories from the Middle East, of a man who left to his 3 sons 17 camels. And to the first son he left half the camels, to the second son he left 1/3 of the camels, and to the youngest son he left 1/9 of the camels. Well, 3 sons got into a negotiation. 17 doesn't divide by 2, it doesn't divide by 3, it doesn't divide by 9. Brotherly temper started to get strained. Finally, in desperation, they went and they consulted a wise old woman. The wise old woman thought about their problem for a long time, and finally she came back and said, well, I don't know if I can help you, but at least if you want, you can have my camel. So then they had 18 camels. The first son took his half of 18 is 9. The second son took his 1/3, 1/3 of 18 is 6. The youngest son took his 1/9, 1/9 of 18 is 2. You get 17. They had 1 camel left over. They gave it back to the wise old woman.
So the difference between positions and interests, you see, the reason politics is stuck is everybody's stuck in their positions. The Republicans want to cut taxes, cut entitlements, reduce the debt. Democrats want to tax the wealthy, protect entitlements. So as long as you're in your positions, nothing happens, and that's where we are. If you look at the shared interests, they all want to grow the economy, they all want a safety net for the poor, and they all want the right size of government. So just a simple example. Until people can move off of positions and onto interests, you're stuck. So before I married Junko, I did a shared interest inventory, because the problem with my first marriage was we had 0 shared interest except the children. So once they're gone, there was nothing. Food and wine, yep. Travel, yep. History, art, appreciating, caring for each other's, similar religious views, classical music, all these things are shared interests. So we have no problem living together, addressing these things. Okay. And shared interest is not everything. She's an orthodontist. I don't care about other people's teeth. She does crafts work herself. She doesn't have much interest in physics or my workshops, and this is all fine. You don't have to agree on everything. In fact, I think if you did, it's something the matter. By the way, that's a picture in China at one of the border cities. So Jim Odom was a master at this. He was the second project manager of Hubble. And one day I left NASA many years ago. I went to, doing 4D work. I went to Huntsville to meet with the center director about something. And I walk into the Marriott and Jim's sitting there. I said, what are you doing here? He said, I wanted to meet with you. I said, Jim, you're still working. How'd you know to come here? Well, he said, I happened to get a look at the center director's calendar and saw you were on it. And I knew you'd be in the best hotel in the city, so that's what I sat down to wait. So we started trading stories about Hubble, just a friendly chat. And he talked about he's brand new project manager. You may remember that the administrator fired the other guy. And Jim's got his first meeting with the scientists. And Marshall is attached to Redstone Arsenal. It was earlier part of Redstone Arsenal. So they've got an officers club there they can use. So they had a little reception for the new people. So the telescope scientist, #1 science leader in the project, when he walks up to Jim, before he says hello, he says, "Odom, I'm going to make you miserable." What's he doing? He's doing a power struggle. What did Jim do? This genius thing. No, you're not, because we want the same thing. No, you're not, because I'm going to address our shared interests. So my 2 rules: avoid power struggles and never power struggle, don't have the power. So this was the genius he was at human relationships and technically smart, et cetera, et cetera. See the power of this, So an example of this, I really want to hire a key person for Hubble servicing. What happened was that I was thinking about this project, and the servicing mission was going to be difficult. In fact, at least one person had written, a prominent guy had written a book about our failure with the servicing mission. He'd already written everything, why it failed, the fact that it failed, and he's getting ready to get rich on it. And I'm looking at this and I'm asking, what is there about this that I don't understand very well? And I concluded that the astronaut operations part, which is the most critical part, where they've got to go out and put on their spacesuits and go fix this thing, I knew very little about this. And operations in general, the shuttle was never a problem. So I wanted to be absolutely certain this thing was going to be successful. So I wanted to hire a person to manage the operations piece. So I ran some ads in national magazines trying to find someone from industry, and I got a really good applicant, and went to the head of administration and said, I need to hire this person. She pretty much, that's not actually her, but looks like her. She said no. She said, I'm sick and tired of you trying to do everything to grow your division, and so you're trying to manipulate me using Hubble as an excuse. So I thought about the emotional side bank accounts. With her, they were pretty overdrawn. She and I had conflict through the years. I'm not even sure why, but it was always there. And our mutual boss, I had very good situation with him. So I decided I'm going to do badge on the table. Now, this is a common expression, at least at NASA. And what it means is that you care so much about something that if you don't get it, you're going to quit and leave. And this is a power struggle, right? So if you don't have the power, don't power struggle. Who's got the power? Well, he does. But I also have considerable power, because if I'm not there, who's going to lead this effort? So I did not want to have him pick up my badge and fire me. So I had to do something better. So I said, what does he want that I can want for him also? Well, the first thing is a successful mission. Yeah, he wants that, but he's got other things. He's got planetary missions. That's not a showstopper. Peace with her and the other directors, because if he gives, so this whole thing was watched. The whole organization's on one floor of a building, a large floor. Everybody's talking to each other. Everybody knows this is going on. When I walk down the hall towards his office, they're sort of ducking in the shadows because they know it's going to be a big conflict. Can I want that for him? I can, yes. When we had the congressional testimony, it was actually harder on him than on me, because they insisted he be there. And they got questions from their staffers. And for a lot of the questions, he didn't know the answer because he wasn't as familiar with the thing as I was. And it wasn't really, it was what lawyers call leading questions. When did you quit beating your wife type questions? And I would want to be able to tell him that I would indemnify him from ever doing this again. So how I would do this is, if we had a failure with the servicing mission, I would call a press conference. I would declare I'm completely responsible for it and say that Len gave me everything I requested. So I'd like for nothing. The failure is totally on me. He had nothing to do with it. So that's what I said to him. Can you imagine the conversation? I went in there, his office settings. First thing I said was, I want a servicing mission, even more than I want a new car, and I really, really want a new car. So I tried to lead with a little humor, went through the dialogue. And the question was, what does she want that I can want for her also? What she wants is power and control over me. No way. But she can want for me not to end run her in the future. So I said to Lynn, Katie's gonna take this hard. And what I want you to tell her is that I will never do this again. And she controlled office space, travel money, things like this. I will never do, I just care so passionately about this. So I went in and imagine the conversation. I started with the humor. I said, I really want a successful mission for both of our sakes. But I will promise that I will never end run Katie again. And I will protect you from ever having to go to these hearings, because I will say you gave me everything I wanted. I'll have a public press conference and resign. What do you think he said? Pick up your badge. Okay. So see how it works? Good, Nico?
Yeah, I see it.
So what happened? He said, pick up your badge.
Yeah, in other words, you got what you want.
Okay, so he gave you what you want, right?
That meant I got the hire. By the way, it turned out the guy wasn't actually very good, but that was another story.
And what was her reaction?
I didn't ever see her, so I'm sure she was mad, and I'm sure, by the way, she and he were very close. So he could manage that relationship. They were quite close. He actually, after he left, he helped her get a nice cushy job at a university. So he took care of her. So,
Nice,
yeah.
nice.
So when I was at Harvard, I really got involved with the Japanese people. There were 5 Japanese executives there, and one was in my CAN group. Got to be very close friends with him. And I think that it's interesting, I had not paid much attention to how much time I'd spent in my life in Okinawa growing up, but it all came back at Harvard. And when I went back to NASA, I wanted to open up space cooperation with Japanese. It was a program at a Tokyo University-based thing that was similar to space science. And I asked people why we'd never done that. And the guy who was director of science at Goddard, said, you can't work with those people. And I said, what do you mean you can't work with them? He said, yeah, they're impossible. The problem is that they want to, they don't want to give up the data. So NASA has rules that after some period of time, I think 90 days or something, after a mission flies, the scientists that had the experiment have to make the data public and share them with everybody. Maybe it's 6 months, I've forgotten. But anyway, it's a hard NASA rule. So they won't give up the data. So I went and met with Yasuo Tanaka, my counterpart. He was the astrophysics guy at the thing was called ISAS. And he said, I said, why won't you share the data? And he said, well, we're a very small organization and we do everything. We build the experiment. When the satellite launches, we operate the experiment. We're not like the US where the scientists can sort of hire a contractor to build the thing. Then once it launches, NASA operates it for them and sends in the data. And so I'm housed in Tokyo University, and I have to publish just like anybody else in the rest of the world at a university. So I'm busy operating the satellite. If I made the data public, other people would publish the papers, and I never would. So that meant I'd probably lose my job. So that's what it's about. So the question is, what does Yasuo want that I can want for him also? He wants to publish papers. Can I want that for him too? I sure can. That's all fine with me. And I said, Yasuo, I think the hardest part about this is probably not the science, but it's probably writing the things in acceptable English, because all the top journals in the world are in English. Said, you're right, and you know, Japanese is very different, alphabet and everything, and he said, that's the hard part. Says, how about if I do this? How about if I get US scientists who are willing to relocate and live with you in ISAS and co-author papers? He said, that would be great, because now I've got the help with the English language, got top things. So we proceeded in our first satellite with Solar A, and we provided, we're supposed to provide the detector, and in the end, they did that themselves. And I issued an announcement, and we got like half a dozen people, and they were all people that I knew, and they were all fairly fluent in Japanese. And I did something that's not really allowed. I'm supposed to make the selection, but I sent the proposals to him to tell me who you want. And he picked 2 guys, and we sent them over there for 2 years. And it was a win-win for everybody. The satellite flew, and the emperor, after the mission was successful, gave Yasuo a medal. And he was grateful to me. So he after I left NASA, he paid for me to, but by now he'd gone to Max Planck Institute in Germany, because in Japan there's mandatory retirement at 62 or something. He's still able to work. So he went over there and began to learn German and work in Germany. And he brought me over. Now I'm not a government employee anymore. A fully paid 3-week vacation in Germany with him and his wife. So we remain friends. He's recently deceased, and I still visit him in Munich to this day. So I just want to see how simple it is to ask this question and break an impasse.
Yes, Shirley, yeah, we can see that.
So you guys want to do the exercise live online?
I'm not sure about.
Oh, yeah,
microphone,
it won't work with no audio. Okay, forget it. It wouldn't work. So this was something that my friend Ann Cochette came up with. We're doing a workshop, and she says, I've got an exercise I'd like to do. And is that okay? And I said, sure, I trusted her. So here's what came out of this. I modified it a bit, but asked people to look around the room and find someone you might want to know better. Then stand, make eye contact, that's really important, and partner with them. And if you don't have a partner, raise your hand and we'll find one. Decide who is person A and who is person B. When you hear the whistle, every minute, stop and check the screen. So I did the exercise with Frank just as a demo, and here's what happened. A tells B about their core beliefs. I said, my core beliefs are scientific method, physics, empathy, being accountable, making a contribution, giving love, gets love, implausibility of religions, and our extinction from climate change. Then Frank tells me about his core beliefs: own your problems, accountability, trust, empathy, helping others, treating people like I want to be treated. Then tell Frank what I most enjoy: thinking, ideas, teaching, seafood, talking with friends, caring for loved ones, learning, contributing, drinking wine with Junko. Time with family and friends, helping others solve problems, good food, share with others, discussing new ideas, and teaching. What I care deeply about: ethics, living and spreading happiness, my loved ones, clarity of understanding, being heard, understood, respected, economic self-sufficiency, active, healthy life, no regrets. My family, grandchildren, close friends. You can see the green and blue coming through, can't you, in this? Treating others
Yeah,
with
we
respect
can
and
see that.
dignity, doing others what I say, being trusted. So our shared interest, both physics, empathy, accountability, learning, science, methodology, living the golden rule, living in integrity, family, sharing new ideas, teaching. Frank said, just like me, wanted to be a teacher. So in workshops, this is incredible. I tell them shake hands or hug their new friend. And a lot of it's hugging, it's kind of, maybe not surprising. I say, come up together and tell us about your experience. And the Chinese love to do this. They're much more outgoing than Americans are. They come up there and they talk about becoming best friends, and they're gonna get together after. This is after 8-minute exercise. That's the power of this. So it's just all fun. So back to my proposal team, shared interest with what and whom. They got this. They said the customer cares most about science results and program success in the budget. And so they decided that they're going to embrace the science. And it did something quite remarkable. I was in Europe for 2 months with a home exchange. I was living in Holland. I wasn't there when they wrote the proposal, but they had me red team it as soon as I got back. And page 2 had a picture of every one of the team leaders involved in the proposal and what they cared about scientifically. And about the project. This was the James Webb Space Telescope, of course. And I said, this is amazing. What you've done is an amazing storyline shift. The government runs a storyline about contractors. You're money grubbers. All you want to do is grab the money. And you shifted the whole thing over to, we're with you. We have the shares. We care about the science. You see how powerful this is?
Yes, it is, Charlie. It's very powerful.
So people do things for their reasons, not ours. We do the same thing, the group work, just like before. They write in their workbooks. So bottom line, what do they want? I can want for them also. In your personal life, I think before you enter any relationship, if you have a new girlfriend, Nico, do the shared interest exercise. Work life. So what happens is that a lot of work with Jet Propulsion Laboratory, they would typically integrate with the contractors in ways other people wouldn't. So they sort of interleave themselves in the org chart. Well, we're still tribal, and tensions would build after some time. I do this shared interest exercise and erase the tensions and come back 18 months, do it again. Powerful stuff. A really simple
Sure.
comments. We'll wrap up
Yeah,
for
it's a
today.
powerful stuff, Charlie. Very powerful.
Yeah, I just need to go on a call immediately, like
Yep.
in the hour.
Well, we're gonna
So
stop exactly on time.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank
It's
you. Thanks, Paul.
always a good thing to go through this. Appreciate. Yeah, appreciate.
See you next
Thank
week.
you.
Marissa with her mousemanship. Bye-bye. See you. Thank you.
Thank you.